Somebody found some keys in the second to last row on this side of the shul. If anybody is missing keys, please see me.
Erev Tov, everyone. So in the waning seconds of Hanukkah, I'd like just to review one idea about Hanukkah. We say in Al-Hanisim a series of descriptions that Hanukkah represents. So the first is Masarta Giborim Biyad Chaloshim. You gave over Giborim, so literally it means very strong warriors in the hands of the weak. Now, the understanding of all of this is Al-Hanisim. These are all miracles. Each phrase is a miracle unto itself. The culmination is that all of these phrases, so to speak, describe the events of Hanukkah, and therefore that enhances the miracle fivefold, because all of them occurred. So usually when Giborim fight Chaloshim, the strong fight people who are weaker than they are, so the strong prevail. And here, the Greeks were much stronger militarily. They had a professional mercenary army. The army of Alexander the Great had conquered the entire world. And the Seleucid Greeks who ruled in the north and who ruled over the land of Israel were a mighty force. So Giborim Biyad Chalosh, so that's a miracle. It's interesting that Chazal chose to redefine Giborim. In Ovos we read, Ezeu Gibor HaKovesh Yitzra. So the idea of a Gibor and the idea of a Cholosh is exactly opposite in moral terms. A Gibor is someone who is so strong that he is able to control his passions. And a Cholosh is a person who is weak and gives in to his passions. So implied here are both things. Giborim gave over the strong in the hands of the weak, because the weak were really stronger than those that were thought to be strong. Because those who were thought to be strong never were able to control their passions. While the weak, they were the true Giborim because of the fact that they were in control of themselves. Then the Al-Hanisim teaches us Rabbi Biyad Matim. The many were given over into the hands of the few. So again, it's not known what the population of Israel was at the time of the Hashmonaim. I mean, there are estimates from historians. I don't know what they base the estimates on, But they say there were no more than 2 to 3 million Jews in Israel in the time of the Bayis Sheni, though from the Gemara it's mashma that there were many, many more, at least at the end of the time of the Churban. But the Greeks were more numerous, because the Greeks had allies. Greece was composed of many different city-states that were united under Alexander the Great, who was from Macedonia, and he united all of the Greek states. So again, numbers count. And Rabbi Biad Matim is itself a miracle, that the few should overcome the many. Especially in battle, it doesn't work that way. All strategy is based upon having superiority. Today, superiority is perhaps measured in firepower, but even today, numbers count. You have to have a big army. And the Lord handed over the many into the hands of the few. Now, in history, we have a number of times when the few overcome the many. That's not an unknown quantity. So then the miracle of the many and the few by itself would not necessarily stand as a miracle. It stands as a miracle because it was combined with the others. And then all of a sudden, the prayer elevates itself to a moral level, not a practical level anymore. Tmeim biyat tahorim. The whole concept of Tumah is really not known outside of halacha, outside of the Jewish world. In the non-Jewish world, Tumah almost is a completely foreign concept. And we have a whole Shulchan Aruch regarding Tumah, and different levels of Tumah, and how to purify oneself. So in the Torah, Tumah is a real entity. It's something that exists, even if palpably we cannot touch it. So Tmeim biyat tahorim describes people who have no concept of Tumah. And we see if you have no concept of Tumah, everything is permitted. There can be no moral constraints. Eventually, there's no right or wrong. And Tohor, that is the ultimate opposite of Tumah. It's a sense of purity, which also is something that cannot be felt, but sometimes people are able to experience it either psychologically or spiritually. Rishoyim biyad tzadikim. There are evil people in the world. And usually evil people who have, again, no constraints, nothing to hold them back. So they do what they want. And there's short of using force against them, there's no way to stop them. You cannot appeal to logic. You cannot tell them that it's a matter of moral correctitude. They don't have those concepts. A tzaddik, a righteous person, is always constrained again by morality. We see that by Yosef HaTzadik, when he is tempted by the wife of Potiphar, he says, how can I do it? And I would be guilty of a sin. Well, nobody in the world who behaves in that fashion thinks they're guilty of a sin. The whole concept doesn't exist. And therefore, for instance, when we characterize Esav as being a Rasha, or we characterize Haman as being a Rasha, we're saying that the person has no constraints. There's nothing beyond his doing whatever he wants to do. And finally, it says, Zaydim biyaroske torasecha. Zaydim, it's the word mazid. There's a Rasha because of his passions or because he's misled. Or there are other reasons that drive him to do it. A Rasha has a conscience. The Zaydim, they have no conscience. They do it purposefully. They say that we're all animals. So the lion does not regret eating the antelope. It's the nature of the world. So that's the nature of human beings as well. Oskei Torasecha are people, if a person has a connection to Torah, that person automatically has constraints. That person automatically cannot do things without a conscience. It says by Shimshon, V'ruach Hashem heichel lefamo. The Spirit of God began to pound within him, to beat within him. That's the conscience that a person has. And that is the greatest weapon. You cannot enforce every law. There are not enough police in the world. And we see that. So it's only because there's a social compact between us that we're going to somehow have a society. We all made up our minds that we're going to stop at the red light at the Ramzor. There are not enough police to enforce that. So it's the social compact that does it. When the social compact breaks down, as for instance, as it seems to be doing in certain parts of the United States, where people just run in and take whatever they want from the store and run out. So before it was a social compact, you know. There were very fancy stores in Miami Beach when I was there. And, didn't have armed guards there. It was a social compact. You weren't going to steal. But once the social compact breaks down, so then everything happens. That's the Zaydim. And the only defense against Zaydim is Oskei Torasecha. Is to have this moral conscience that the Torah gives for us. And it says, Oskei Torasecha. It doesn't say Lomde. We're not talking about the knowledge. We're talking about the fact that somehow we have a connection. We have an asik with the Torah. That's the bracha that we make in the morning. We should have a connection. We have a connection to Torah, then you have a moral compact. You have a sense of civilization, a sense of conscience. The year of the weak are the strong, the few are the many, and then the miracles, seemingly miracles, happen for us. So we are able to survive while the enemies depart. And that's part of the idea of Hanukkah, the wonderful yontiv that we had. In the Mirza Hashem, we should be zoche next year to celebrate it again in good health and to see the menorah lit in the Beit HaMikdash. Rabbi Chananya ben Akash Omer Ratzah HaKadosh Baruch Hu L'zakos es Yisrael Aficha Yirbo Lahem Torah Mitzvot Shenem Anamach Hafez L'man Tzidkol Yadil Torah V'Yadil.